All right, everybody, welcome into episode 78 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. It is May 22nd, 2023. I'm Nick Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, of the United States. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and also being in Tennessee in spirit is Gustavo Tomazeli. Russ, how are you doing?
Doing great. Since it's a little chilly, started to be a little fall-ish weather, winter-ish weather. I took my Tennessee long sleeves T-shirt, and I will always be proud to wear orange because as the song says, Rocky Top will always be home sweet home to me. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely needed to put that um, in terms of future plans on Rock Top. They're really trying to turn um, Knoxville into a real destination in terms of what it can be in terms of building a whole entertainment district on top
yeah,
of
that's
the.
great. Let's start with that because what that can be uh, not only a turning point in terms of the University of Tennessee, but in terms of SEC athletics, in terms of college sports.
Yeah, apparently, one Iowa State has apparently already been in the um, building blocks of doing this. They um, unveiled their new district last year, and they're currently building it, like next to their football stadium. So Tennessee is the second one to announce this, first one in the SEC. But in a way, I think it's kind of fitting, right? Because you know the strip. Every time I go back to Knoxville, the Cumberland Strip it has less and less character. It's becoming all apartments. I mean, you should really see it now, Gus. You would not recognize it from when you left back in 2021.
Which has been this week has been 2 years. Wow.
Yeah, so you wouldn't recognize the strip. It's all apartments now. Like it's really sad because the strip used to have a lot of character, a lot of establishments, and frankly, that's kind of died as a nightlife. I mean, the only real things over there, you still have Gus's, you still have Cool Beans, you still have
But
Copper Celis still hanging on.
it's kind of on the strip, but not really because it is adjacent to the strip. Like, it's not.
Yeah, but I consider it a part of the strip, at least what the strip used to be. And you have like
Yeah.
fitness, but or you have um trying to think. You have Uptown. I never went to Uptown. I've never been to Uptown. From what I understand, it was always just the place where people underaged managed to get in.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, I never did that. So, it, but like I think with that part of campus dying, and I feel like for right now for students there, because think about it, enrollment's only going up and up. Of course, the last football season really helps with that, and I think these students are going to have to find different places to hang out. Like obviously, the old city is still there if you're in Knoxville. South Knoxville is booming. But what about running campus? And I really think this is going to be an interesting opportunity to see what you can put on a college campus, how to really integrate the college campus into the city at large. Because the university always kind of felt like its own separate city from the rest of Knoxville, and it'd be kind of cool to have uh, some stuff to do right on the middle of campus, even when class isn't happening, and even when a game isn't even happening. So I'm really curious to see what this is like, and I'm curious to see what those rates are like. Can you imagine staying on the top floor of that hotel during a football game? And I think Gus is fixing up something right now. Um,
I'm
so
still here. I'm just
basically,
fix my audio.
yeah. So and it's interesting. They really look towards developments like the battery, for example, in Atlanta,
Oh,
and
that was
how electric that is.
the Battery is one of the most great places in terms of sports. I'll call this it's like non-game sports environment I ever been. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's
Mhm.
on the arena, but it's not related to the game. Like the Battery is not dependent on tourist park because I even remember being that in December and it was rocking it, and there was no baseball. Of course, when you have the Braves, booming like they did in 2021, of course, it makes the Battery even a more interesting place to go. But the Battery was one of the greatest concepts in terms of making it like arenas are more interesting places to hang out, even on non-game days.
Exactly. And you have like when you look at the other Atlanta arenas, like Mercedes-Benz and State Farm Arena are by themselves. They don't really have anything else to do around them. Um, but as you said, that's the charm of the Braves. And in a way that they're going to try to do something like that here in Chattanooga with the new Lookout Stadium. And I think, like when you look at Chattanooga FC and the Chattanooga Red Wolves, I think there's a huge difference. And the Red Wolf Stadium is out there; it's right there at the interstate intersection, and there's really nothing else around it. And it's kind of hard to get to. And to me, I think it doesn't. It hurts their popularity just where they are compared to what Chattanooga FC has with the being in the on the south side and having multiple things to do around it. I think location absolutely matters, and I love the fact that we're trying to make that a more valuable place right there on the river. You have Calhoun's, but Calhoun's is really the only business you have down there right on the river. So I'm excited to see how that develops.
No, and I always felt that when I drove by, there was a underdeveloped area in terms of the whole UT campus. It always felt a little bit underdeveloped, and it makes sense. But I feel like the better idea is to make kind of like the perfect place for me, to be really honest, in terms of developing this battery, is that parking lot, the G10. That would have been amazing. But if you turn that parking lot down, it would have made parking on UT a hell. Like I would even, but that would have been kind of the where the Barry could have been if you kind of match what Atlanta Braves have and the UT have. But also be on the river. Imagine on Vol Navy. Would have make Vol Navy even more appealing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially if you have all those options right there. I mean, volunteer landing. I mean, you could put some stuff next to there. Architecturally, I want to see how that works. Putting a whole district on top of a parking garage. I want to understand the parking garage is still going to stay. They're just going to build on top of the garage, which seems really insane to me. But I'm, I'm sure someone out there has already done this.
Yeah, yeah. It's like if you have the project, does that means that it already have been developed somewhere else. Like the battery also has like an adjacent uh, parking lot that works really well. I remember they kind of being connected, but I feel like it just makes like it's so funny how that Danny White hired, and of course Josh Heupel really turned things around, not only on the field but off the field for UT, for the University of Tennessee, of course, especially for the Athletics. Like 2 years ago, we felt that, of course, football is the biggest, like biggest brand in terms of UT sports, and like that January 2021, we felt there was like the almost like a cardiac arrest, but it felt like UT is on a hot streak.
Absolutely, and that excuse me, and that hot streak is continuing on to the Diamonds with both softball and baseball. Of course, the Lady Vol softball team they swept the SEC both regular season and tournament championship. And this weekend, they didn't slow down at all. They dominated their competition, swept Indiana, and are on to the Super Regionals where they host the other UT, the Texas Longhorns. As I flash my horns down here. Yeah, so the Lady Vols looking for their first College World Series appearance since I believe 2013, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, this was their
2013
first.
was the last.
Yep, 2013, and I believe they lost to Oklahoma in that regional final. So they played Texas. Texas has been a very good program in softball, and it's funny. It's like this is a future SEC series.
It's as crazy as it is.
Yeah, so it's going to be cool. I've always, well, okay, well, Tennessee, the baseball team did play Texas in the College World Series a few years ago, but they lost that game. So hopefully the softball team makes up for that and can pull off a W here.
Yeah, and the baseball team is. I think they're doing. I think they're still kind of finding the adjustment, and hopefully they can be better in late May, like in June, than in the regular season. Because we've seen like they crush it in the regular season and then fall apart in June.
Well, I'll say this: they're playing their best ball right now, and they didn't get off to a hot start whatsoever. But I saw the stat in the last 16 games in SEC play, they're 12-4. I think that's a really good sign. I mean, this team, they've won most of their series down the stretch here. They finished the regular season 16-14 in conference play, and in the SEC, that's good because everyone is so good in this conference that if you're above 500, you're a really good team. And I think that this team is. I think as long as they win a game or two in Hoover, they'll be hosting a regional, which at one point this season seemed like that wasn't going to happen. But I think last year was such a generational team talent-wise, and obviously the year before that we went to the College World Series, that anything short of absolute dominance was going to be disappointing to fans. But I do think, in a way, it provides an opportunity for this team because Tennessee is no longer the hunted in college baseball. I think everybody towards the end of last year were bringing their A games when they played Tennessee. And I'm hoping that this year a different effect starts. And it really puts us hopefully in a better position to where maybe we can sneak up and resurprise some teams and help us get back to Omaha. And because here's the thing, we still have Chase Dolander, you still have Chase Burns, you still have Drew Beam. Like you've got the pitchers, and Blake Burst has been awesome. We've seen Griffin Merritt; he has gotten really good, and they were just hitting out of the yard. I mean, they had just destroyed South Carolina in the second game on Saturday on the road. It was their first road series win. And here's the thing: they're going to have to win a series on the road in the NCAA tournament. But I think they have learned how to win on the road. And that, to me, excites me about their chances in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like the SEC baseball, it's so competitive. You see how many teams has been good at Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Vandy, Florida. They're the best in the country. Some of them have been national champions. And
yeah,
of course,
ironically, both Miss State and Ole Miss didn't make the Hoover. Just so you know, they were both horrible this year.
Yeah, but you have the SEC tournament. Don't count them out.
They don't get to play in Hoover.
Oh my God!
Yeah, because the bottom two don't make it.
Oh boy!
Yeah, because Miss State fired their coach like halfway through the season. It was so bad.
But there's one SEC team definitely this Vols team, the baseball Vols wants to beat, and it's the team from Fayetteville.
Oh, absolutely, Arkansas. I mean, you would love to get a chance at them. When you look at the bracket, they start against Texas A&M tomorrow. Of course, that's a single elimination. So if you lose that game, you're out. Of course, the last 2 years, the Vols made the championship but lost to Arkansas 2 years ago and then beat Florida last year to win the championship. And you have to wonder, do you want to win this tournament? Because I feel like, Arkansas 2 years ago won the tournament, didn't make the College World Series, lost to NC State. Tennessee wins the tournament last year, gets shocked by Notre Dame. I also like winning at Hoover is a curse. I don't think I want to win the tournament this week.
I'll tell you this. It'll only be worth it if it is against Arkansas. I'll tell you this.
Well, if Tennessee wins tomorrow, then they would play Arkansas.
Then if they beat Arkansas, that's fine. It's good. They can beat Arkansas, then rest all the players.
Yeah, like I think you don't want to go all the way to Sunday. I mean, yeah, we won the SEC tournament last year, and does anyone really remember that? No, everyone remembers us getting shellacked by Notre Dame in Game 3. Like that's all anyone cares about because the expectation by the middle of last year was winning the national title, and that didn't happen. So I think that I'm not saying national title obviously is the goal this year. I think we've learned no matter how good you are in college baseball, um, it all depends whether or not you're playing well at the end. And I think this team is playing a lot better at the end than maybe even last year's team was. Because last year's team, they kind of struggled down the stretch. I know they won in Hoover, but they didn't play well at all in the NCAA tournament. Remember, they struggled with Campbell. They were about to lose to them. And then, they come back around and lose to Notre Dame. So the warning signs were there with last year's team. And I feel like this year's team has had to overcome way more adversity. And hopefully that makes them better fit to make a run to Omaha.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the kind of, as you said, Tennessee already won last year, so we don't have the pressure of not winning it. So we have to find adjustments, and even if we did lose, or like either in the quarterfinals, semifinals, or even the finals, hopefully will be like a kind of like a way to see mistakes that we can fix in the postseason into the College World Series.
Absolutely. But speaking of just college sports in general, I know you're bringing up something that I'm personally very, very excited about. Somebody
Yeah,
who has grown up with NCAA football games. Like I played every NCAA football game from like NCAA 06 to the last one to 14. So new news came out this week. EA Sports is letting FBS players opt into the 2024 video game. So EA Sports is contracted with a company called One Team Partners to facilitate collegiate athletes' names and likenesses into the game. So basically, players would have to opt in to being in the game, and if they didn't end up in the game, then it would just be a generic avatar created in their place. So you could have a situation where you have a lot of these rosters with some players getting paid and having their likenesses, some not, but you would still get a chance to play with your favorite teams. And like if you're a dynasty nut like I am, it doesn't matter after like 2 to 3 years anyway, because you're playing with just randomly generated recruits. So obviously my number one concern is that EA Sports has sucked for years now. Like they haven't made a good video game since the mid 2010s. The Maddens stink now. All their other games stink now. And I'm afraid that they can't make it an NCAA game now that's anywhere close to what NCAA 14 was. And I'm afraid it's just going to be a microtransaction riddled mess, with like Madden, like how Madden Ultimate Team is. And I haven't bought a sports video game now in like 4 years because it's bad. It's just so bad every single year.
I feel like a lot of people would definitely want to buy it just because what you said in terms of the nostalgia, in terms of bringing it back, that feeling of playing with your favorite college team again. Maybe the first one would be good, but let's see about the second version of it, the 2025. I think the 2024 would be they will have good sales. Question when the nostalgia feeling wear out, and then the 2025 game comes up. Then I'll
Yeah.
ask you if people really bought into, or they just bought into the nostalgia.
Also, too, it'll have to convince me to buy a PS5. I have not bought a PS5. I still have a PS4. Um, and I found no reason to buy a PS5 because for the longest time, I still think this is the case. You can't really find PS5s. ever since COVID happened, it was hard to buy one. So they were having to make all these games that they were going to make for the PS5 for also the PS4. So I just never found a reason to go fight for one.
Yeah, me
And
too. I
plus,
still have the
PC is better
PS3.
anyway. Yeah, I mean, PS3 is the best one in my opinion. I mean, I love my PS4, and it's lasted a very long time. I've had the PS4. Trying to think, when did I get the PS4? It had to be like Christmas, like 2014, Christmas 2015. So I've had it for like almost a decade, like 8-9 years, and it still works.
My PS2, I bought it, I think, in 2012 when I went to New York, and it still works though, but I rarely use. But it's just
I'm gonna be
interesting. I hope.
honest. The games I'm playing, only game I'm really playing these days is The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom on Nintendo Switch.
When COVID hit, the game I was playing on my PS3 was oh my god, Crash Bandicoot. That was what I was
Oh,
playing.
that's a good one. Yeah, of course,
Oh.
Naughty Dog. They've gone on to do uh, The Last of Us, and what are like? Why am I blanking? Uncharted. The like the Nathan Drake, Indiana Jones type adventure games. But they started off making like Crash Bandicoot.
Oh, that game was. I love like that game helped me get through COVID.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a great platformer, and there's just so many classics on PlayStation. I mean, it's just better overall than Xbox. And I don't know. I mean, I understand how some people could maybe prefer like a Halo or whatever, but
And another question I have is, do all the players get paid the same, or like a Caleb Williams or a Kate May, the quarterback from North Carolina?
yeah, I think it's gonna have to be the same. Because then I think if EA would run into the risk at that point of, okay, we're going to pay this player X amount of money to have their space versus this amount of money for this player. Um, I think that would cause a lot of people to not do it because I mean, you got to think, the age of these kids, they're going to do stuff to be petty. And because I know, like if I were in this position and I was having people, get their face scanned for way more than I was going to get my face scanned, I wouldn't let them scan my face until they paid me the same. And I'll be curious to see financially how this works because, like in the NFL, being a man is a part of their contract. You know, they get those payments via the contract, and in college you don't. So, and plus you got to remember too, in the NFL there's only 32 teams with 53 players. In college football, if you just have FBS, that's 130 teams with 85 men rosters. I mean, if you multiply that, so 130 times 85, that's over 11,000 players. And I don't know. I wonder what the rate's going to be. So, like, let's say you pay them all $5,000. That's $5.5 million. You're paying in likenesses, and I feel like you're going to have to pay a little bit more. And the average video game now goes for about $70. Let's say you sell 1,000,000 copies. 1,000,000 copies nets you like 70 million. I mean, obviously, after production and paying the people you need to pay, it would be a very pricey game to make, and you would really need it to go well. And NCAA never sold as well as Madden, just because the NFL is a far bigger sport than college football, a far bigger entity. I mean, although college is huge, and obviously here in the South, we care more about college than NFL. That's basically the only region of the country where that's true. Most of the rest of the country loves the NFL more.
Oh yeah, I agree. And like I said, the first one, it's gonna be a hit because it'll be a lot of nostalgia and a lot of hype. But they have to make this right. They have to get it right. Because if they don't, then I don't know if people are gonna be hyped up for the 2025. That's what I'm really skeptical about.
You know, like it sounds exactly like the conversations about North Wilkesboro in NASCAR from the other day. You know,
Yeah.
and it's kind of crazy. Um, this literally was what I was going to bring up in terms of nostalgia and hype, and how maybe the race itself didn't live up to the hype. Because I've been talking about this North Wilkesboro race for months now, and maybe honestly, ever since we started this podcast, and ever since I brought in NASCAR every now and then, I've referred to North Wilkesboro as one of NASCAR's biggest mistakes in terms of leaving that track behind, a track that was so integral to the history of the sport, the founding of the sport, where Wilkesboro itself was basically a place where a lot of the original drivers were from, because that's where they moonshined, and that's where they were running away from the cops and souping up their cars, and that's how stock car racing was born. But we left there in the 90s for greener pastures, and it's kind of come back to bite NASCAR in the bullet. And so after all this time, after our speedway was rotting and Dale Jr. brought it back, we got to race there again last week. And honestly, it was surreal watching it, because the last time they raced there was 1996. I wasn't born yet. And in a way, it was just the race. The race itself didn't really even matter. It's just cool to see them back there. I mean, I'll say this: I thought the truck race was great. A lot of the qualifying races were really good, but the actual Cup race itself, it wasn't the greatest race. It was actually kind of boring. Kyle Larson won it, and he was just way, way too good. I mean, he had one of the most impressive performances. I mean, he literally went from last to first, new set of tires, and just dives through everybody. But once it got to the lead, the race was basically over, which was kind of disappointing. It's a short track. You expect more beating and banging. You expect more incidents, and we just didn't get that. But hey, sometimes in racing, that just happens. And I think overall, it was a successful weekend, and I really, really hope NASCAR comes back to North Wilkesboro. But the racing product will have to improve, kind of like how we were talking about with that NCAA video game, in terms of if we're going to stay at North Wilkesboro and keep it in the schedule, it'll have to be better. But I think it can be better. And I'll be curious to see, in the future, do they repave the track? The pavement on the track is 42 years old. So I think that they're going to have to. I mean, there's no choice. The parts of it were coming up during this weekend. It's racing. But overall, it was just, as a NASCAR fan, as someone who loves the history of the sport, it was cool to see. And I'm glad that we got to see that this weekend.
Of course, and like you described, I feel like they wanted to experiment, and if they really saw the value on it, they'll fix they'll tweak to make it more appealing. I think they see that people bought the nostalgia, but they have to make it even more appealing to keep this vibe going.
Yeah, because nostalgia only works if the product is good.
Yes.
So I'm really hoping that we can make this amazing this year. But speaking of amazing in motorsports, it's Memorial Day weekend this weekend in the United States, which means it is time for a great double header. We first have the Indianapolis 500 at noon on Sunday, and then after that race is over down in Charlotte, we have the Coca-Cola 600, 1,100 miles of racing, one of the best days on the motorsports calendar, and I'm excited for both races. I think the Indianapolis 500, in qualifying, I saw the pole sitter was, I totally forgot who the pole sitter was for the Indy 500, but they were. Alex Palou is the pole sitter, and his average lap time was almost at 235 miles an hour. And on the front stretch in qualifying, they were going up to like 243 miles an hour. These Indy cars this year are bad fast. I'm almost concerned maybe they're too fast. I really wanted Jason on this episode because he's a much bigger IndyCar guy than I am. Just to get his thoughts on what the race
Definitely,
looks like.
we definitely have to get his thoughts.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm excited. I would say I don't know who I would pick to win. Obviously, you got the Polos of the world. You got Scott Dixon. Um, this time next year, though, Kyle Larson is planning on running the 24 Indy 500, and that would be super exciting. Personally, I'll be rooting for Jimmy Johnson. I would like to see Johnson win in IndyCar, but he just hasn't been that great. So that'll be fun. And then the Coca-Cola 600, I'm excited for as well. That race last year was amazing. Like, even though it's a long race, it's 600 miles. Last year's was amazing. Like, you literally had a four-wide battle for the win at the end of the race. I mean, it was crazy. Like, it was just such a crazy race. And I think this year could be just as crazy. This car, the Gen 7 car, is the best on this type of track like Charlotte on the mile and a halves. And I think that plays right into the advantage of this particular race. And I love how the race starts in the daylight at like 5 p.m. and it goes all evening because it's 600 miles and you end up under the lights and you have to adjust with the weather conditions, with the lighting. And it's just so much fun to watch those guys have to adjust to everything. It's going to be a great day of racing. I'm planning on really enjoying Sunday because it's going to be great.
Oh, speaking of racing, Formula One was supposed to have a race this weekend down in Italy, but it got canceled because of a bad weather. Has been really, really bad in the province of Emilia Romagna, and they're gonna have to reschedule. Like, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but the track was flooded. Like, there was no way there could be races down in Imola, Italy.
Yeah, well, at least they didn't try to do what they did in Belgium a few years ago and try to start some haphazardly start the race and then just have to abandon it. Speaking of F1, though, they also have Monaco this week. But I'm going to be honest, I think Monaco is super overrated. Yes, it looks pretty on TV, but they can't pass. You can't really race at
Yeah,
Monaco. I mean, the only thing about Monaco is interesting is qualifying because qualifying is what matters. You can't race at Monaco.
like they keep Monaco big, like they
Go
keep
ahead.
Monaco on the schedule because it's where a lot of the drivers live. There's a lot of tradition, and like Monaco is the most traditional Grand Prix of Formula One. Like, it's not the best, it's not the fastest, but it's the most traditional one. Like, I think you agree on that.
Yeah, I know it's one of the triple crowns, but like when you compare it to the Indianapolis 500 and you compare it to even the Coca-Cola 600, it's a snooze fest. And you know, it's like the if you want to just go have a social time and not actually watch racing, you go to Monaco. And obviously, I would love to go to Monaco. Monaco looks amazing. If I ever have the money to go, I absolutely want to go. Um, but I'm not going there to watch racing because you really can't there. But I get it.
Oh,
It's a
I'm
tradition.
just go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'll say this. We talked about this a few weeks ago when they came to Miami. How I think F1 has become a lot less compelling the past couple of years. Like they had like that bump around 2021 when they had the Verstappen versus Hamilton battle. It was amazing. But it feels like ever since Verstappen beat Hamilton in Saudi Arabia, and Verstappen, he's just taken a chokehold on F1 at this point. Like it's not compelling anymore. Like it feels like no one's challenging Red Bull at all.
But according to sources, one move that can be interesting is that Ferrari wants to offer almost $50 million for Lewis Hamilton. I think that will be one of the biggest moves in F1, probably in like 30 years.
So who would they dump? Would they dump Sainz or would they dump Leclerc?
Oh, Leclerc.
Yeah, I mean, which sucks because I like him a lot on Drive to Survive, but I mean, he isn't getting it done. I mean, he's in. I
I
mean,
I cannot even imagine what the Drive to Survive series would have been. The negotiations between Hamilton and Ferrari. Like, Ferrari is the biggest brand in F1. Like, they have the
yeah,
most following, the passionate fans. Like, the media in Italy is crazy for Ferrari. Like they dedicated entire like we dedicated in Brazil for soccer or like for let's say like baseball in America. Like there's like a passionate following for Ferrari in Italy.
Yeah, and it's crazy. This entire year so far, they literally have one podium,
Yeah.
no wins.
And,
I mean, they've not been competitive.
and they dominated the early 2000s. I mean, Schumacher dominated. Like they were, and Ferrari was so good, even Rubens Barrichello, which was a really good driver, but it wasn't like a really competitive. Was able to be second place, and also kind of be like the second force, behind of course Michael Schumacher, which was one of the best drivers of all time. But since Michael Schumacher retired, Ferrari has not been the same. Of course, they have Kimi Raikkonen, but they had of course Felipe Massa, which came really close to be a champion down in 2008. But then they just couldn't refine a replacement for Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, and it feels like at that point Mercedes took off. Of course, Aston Martin right now is even bit better than them, and you had Red Bull. And is it just me? Like anytime I watch F1, it's really weird how Christian Horner is allowed to be an integral part of the broadcast as the owner of Red Bull. Like, how is this even allowed? It'd be like giving a headset to Rick Hendrick in the middle of
Or
a
to Bob
NASCAR race.
Kraft.
Yeah, like, hey, Bob Kraft, come in and call the Patriots Jets game with us. I mean, and Horner's just like, yeah, well, Mercedes screwed up here, and they screwed up here. Red Bull, we're gonna, right? As long as the stewards don't screw us, we're gonna win. It's so weird, and I think ultimately, at least in the U.S., it's going to remain not the most popular motorsport because it's right now kind of lacking a compel. But it is up to like the Mercedes and the Ferraris to really make it interesting again.
I think the point in terms of compelling, in terms of I'll call it this outside U.S. sports world, is that U.S. has such a dominant internal sports market that anything that is outside, people don't buy it. Like the racing fans in America, they have Indy and they have NASCAR. Basketball, you have NBA. Of course, football is the driving force in terms of sports passion in America. So that's why I feel like gonna take. I don't know what is the ceiling for F1 in America. I'm really curious to see about that. And by the way, I was gonna say like in terms speaking of racing, today was volunteer like registration for to volunteer in the Music City Grand Prix for the Indy in August Open. I mean I think it worked out in it worked out for Nashville to have the Indy race in August.
Yeah, I mean that's been a lot of fun to watch in Nashville, and I think it's been a good circuit. And of course, I'm excited to see what NASCAR's attempt at a street Grand Prix in Chicago is going to look like here on July 4th in a couple of weeks. Although a lot of the locals there have not been a fan of that. A lot of the local politicians have decried Lori Lightfoot for making that deal. So even if it goes well, it may not happen again. So this truly might be a 1 year event.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Like, hopefully they don't make like São Paulo did. A lot of people fuss, and then Indy left, and I wish they would come back because it was awesome. But speaking of screws up, I want you to understand like what the Big Ten is doing with the NBC.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, here's what happened. So the last commissioner, Kevin Warren, you may remember Kevin Warren. He was the commissioner who almost decided not to play any football in 2020, right? Because he was like, we can't do it. It's impossible to play football during COVID. But then Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa, or I think it was Nebraska and Iowa, all basically rebelled and threatened to like sue him. So they decided to do football in like starting in late October. And of course, Donald Trump came in, tried to take credit for it, tried to help him with his election. And that didn't work for him. But anyway, to fast forward, Kevin Warren is able to convince USC, UCLA to come to the Big Ten, and he signs his new TV deal where you're going to have CBS, showing one Big Ten game, NBC showing one, and Fox showing the other. But it's come out today via a Pete Thamel, or it might have come out yesterday, that Kevin Warren never explicitly finished the deal with NBC. So there's $70 million just sitting out there that the Big Ten hasn't technically claimed yet. And here's the further complication of this deal. So in this deal, Kevin Warren promised that NBC would get to show the 2026 Big Ten championship game, but the Big Ten does not own their own media rights. Fox owns their media rights because Fox has the Big Ten network. Fox, when the Big Ten was making those decisions with CBS and NBC, Fox always had representatives there because basically NBC and CBS are subleasing Fox property to show on their networks. But Fox never was intended for either CBS or NBC to show their championship game. So with this mistake uncovered, Fox is forcing the Big Ten to pay them a penalty. And neglected to tell anybody before he left. Because Kevin Warren, I'm not mistaken, he is now the president of the Chicago Bears. And the Big Ten, he just had the Big Ten as an absolute mess. I mean, yes, you got USC and UCLA, but they've left everybody. Plus, a lot of the members of the Big Ten are upset about the idea of having to play night games in November on NBC. Like Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State all apparently did not realize this was a part of the deal. And they don't want to do that because it's the Midwest. It gets cold in November. They don't want to play at night. So there's a lot of discontent up in the Midwest. Well, not just the Midwest, soon to be the Midwest and Los Angeles.
And I'll tell you this, Nick. Kevin can brag about this UCLA, USC coming to the Big Ten, but it wasn't the Big Ten that was merits. Was also the Pac-12 mess. They wanted to get out of the Pac-12 because it was so irrelevant.
Exactly. You can't find the Pac-12 network anywhere. Like, I think literally it's just like AT&T Uverse that carries it, and that's it. And the Pac-12 hasn't won a big game in forever. It's like, I was looking at some of the football games coming up this year. And not to really get into just football games, I have plenty of time to get into this. The first night of the season, the first full night, Florida goes on the road to Salt Lake City to Utah. Remember, Utah was the Pac-12 champion last year. They couldn't beat a 6-7 Florida team. And that game is so big for the Pac-12. They have to find a way to beat what I think is going to be one of the worst teams in the SEC. But if they can't even do that, think about this. Your Pac-12 representatives last year in the New Year's Six. Utah gets destroyed by Penn State. USC blows a lead and loses to Tulane. As you said, Pac-12 is not respected.
Yeah, and SEC keeps separating, and people don't appreciate. I feel like how Greg Shanky is a good commissioner. I feel like I think he has been doing a phenomenal job in terms of the SEC because you can tell a lot. You can kind of make the argument of not being have the parity of the past, but that's what happens when you separate yourself from your competition.
I mean, I appreciated him coming to Cincinnati to be with UT in our NCAA hearings. He didn't have to do that, but he did because I think he realizes how good it is for the SEC to have Tennessee football be good. And it's in his best interest for Tennessee football to be good. Not just he can't make us be champions, obviously, but He wants to have that chance to be good. I think for every institution to be good. So yeah, I think Sankey has done an excellent job as the SEC commissioner and placing us in that position to be a really good conference.
Yeah, definitely. And I cannot wait for September to come for football season. Even my friends here ask about Tennessee football because I talk about so much, and I'm so excited to see Tennessee football and, frankly, college football because it always makes Saturday nights different.
Oh, absolutely. And also, just one more note on college football. To see that Joe Milton and Raymond Keaton are ringing the closing bell on Wall Street on Wednesday. And just some random news. I don't know why. Like the Volunteer Club apparently is going to be on Wall Street on Wednesday, but they'll be in the Big Apple ringing the closing bell.
I,
So
I hope Joe Milton did not, you know, um, really use his full force, closing the bell, because then that bell would have gone, I almost to Times Square.
yeah, that would go across the as you said, that would go over to Brooklyn or Queens.
Yeah, because Joe Milton can use his force to make things go really further.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, so that'll be a lot of fun. I'll be curious to see if they do anything interesting while up in New York City, and hopefully it isn't the last time Joe Milton is in New York this year.
Yeah, hopefully he can by late November he can be there.
Yeah, that he can get back.
But let's move on to the NBA.
Yeah, and this has been a crazy game. I don't know if you have it on, Gus.
No, my ESPN
so,
is not open tonight. Sad.
So the Lakers are up by 15 at halftime. They were up 73-58. But the Nuggets have come back and they had taken the lead, but the Lakers just tied it. It's 94-all. With 10 minutes left in the game, Denver trying to sweep the Lakers in Los Angeles. The Lakers trying to extend their season by one game, trying to get back to Denver. LeBron James tonight has 38, 8, and 7. He has been magnificent. Anthony Davis has not been magnificent. He's only scored 11 points. He's been 3 of 12 tonight. Pretty much been riding on the arms of LeBron James. Of course, the Nuggets more consistent. Jokic has 23, 14, and 11. Just a casual triple-double. I mean, it's not like this is how great Nikola Jokic is. I look at 23, 14, 11. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, that's how great he is. And that's how great he's been this entire series. And frankly, it's not just even him. Jamal Murray has been a revelation in this series. Kind of reminds me a bit of Devin Booker back in 2021. Sans the finals. Like, he has been incredible this postseason. And to me, the Nuggets by far have been the best team in this playoffs. And obviously, despite if they win tonight or not, I think they're going to win this series eventually. Because I don't see any way the Lakers are winning 4 straight games on Denver.
All that. I think the Lakers succeed this season. If you really, really think about Nick, did any Laker fan thought when you ask, like, let's say late November, early December, do you really think Lakers are gonna be like, we're gonna make it to the NBA Finals, we're gonna make it to the Western Conference Finals? No, they were dealing with a team that couldn't, with the mass and I think Westbrook and all that stuff, and then they got better by the trade deadline. They find the rhythm again, and I think they hit the ceiling. I think the Lakers, they hit their ceiling, and Denver, it shows they are ready to compete, and definitely Jokic having the chip on his shoulder, not winning the MVP, made him really even more eager to win this year's championship.
Yeah, I don't think that was ever really the expectation, especially considering where they were at parts of the season. But it just shows how great LeBron and Anthony Davis are, so that they drug this roster this far. But it's just it is the end of the road for the Lakers here, whether that's tonight or whether that is on Wednesday in Denver. I just think Jokic is too good right now.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think, and it's so funny. Like if if the Nuggets and the Heat both swap, we're gonna have to wait what, like a week for the finals?
Yeah, it's going to be June 1st is when they're supposed to start.
Yeah. So it's gonna be both teams are gonna rest like what, like almost like 10 days.
Right. I mean, if you're Adam Silver, you've got to be very mad about how this is unfolded. Because I thought both of these series would be much closer. And the thing is, the Nuggets Lakers, every game has been close. It's just the Nuggets have won every close game in this series. Now, in the Heat Celtics, on the other hand, the first two games were really close. The Celtics should have won game two. Okay, I need to say the Celtics for a second because I got to go on a whole other tangent with them. But just to focus more on Nuggets Lakers, I just think in this series, clearly the Nuggets are just the better team, and I don't think there's really any shame here for the Lakers. The Nuggets to me right now are the prohibitive favorites to win the championship.
No, I agree. I think, as I said before, the Lakers hit their ceiling, and the Laker fans are gonna be not disappointed, but just gonna feel like sad that they wanted to get a championship with LeBron in LA, because the bubble one, even though it still counts for the stats, the Laker fans don't have a connection to that championship because all Laker fans were watching on TV. There were no crowds.
Yeah, I mean that's why they call it a Mickey Mouse championship, right? Because they didn't have to go on the road to win the championship. And this is the thing about the Nuggets, they went into game 6 in Phoenix and destroyed the Suns. They went in, they dominated the ending of game 3 in the crypto.com arena. I still want to call it the Staples Center, but it's the crypto.com arena. And they've come back from a double-digit deficit tonight. They're up by 4 with 9 minutes left. I mean, this Denver Nuggets team has a true killer instinct, and that is so impressive.
Yeah, and the Denver fans wanted the killer instinct for a long time. That's what probably they're most excited about, is to see finally their killer instinct coming up, and see that team there, because Denver in the last few years were like Tigers in the regular season, but a kitty cat in the playoffs.
Yeah. And it's good to see the Nuggets really shake that label, to be able to be that team. Because that was kind of like what we talked about heading into this. Can Denver be that playoff team? And they haven't been until this year. And now, for Mike Malone, for that entire team, I mean, this is a watershed moment for Denver. But on the other side of the country, Joe Mazzulla might be one of the worst NBA coaches I've ever seen. I mean, okay. You're down. Okay. So he had a double-digit lead. He had multiple timeouts. He refuses to use any of them. Lets Miami storm back in game 2. And then down 6 with like 10 seconds left. He doesn't call a timeout to set up a play. They run down, throw up a terrible shot, and they end up losing game 2. And then in game 3, his team just gave up. You had Grant Williams. And yeah, before I preface this, I love Grant Williams. I'm sure you still do too. We covered him at UT. He was a great player for the Vols. But he made a very uncharacteristic move in game 2, trying to get into the face of Jimmy Butler and kind of fire him up. And, I can't defend him on that. That didn't make any sense. for Grant to do in that situation. And now he's getting clowned, and rightfully so, for that. He's kind of almost turned into the Dylan Brooks of this series, which really hurts to say. I want to see Grant Williams be great, but um, that's not the way it's worked here.
Yeah, and then you have Mazzola making awful decisions against, like, Eric Spoelstra should be one of the all-time greats in terms of a head coaching in the NBA. No
Oh,
doubt
no
about
doubt.
it.
I mean, he has proven that he didn't just win those titles because he had LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. He has proven that he had a lot to do with that, and that he deserved. He deserves all the praise, all the latitudes, and that he's going to make his fifth finals. I mean, and two of them were not with the Big Three. He's almost made as many finals without the Big Three as he did with the Big Three. I mean, that's what's crazy.
Do you know what's also funny? Is Eric Spoelstra making the final again, showing how great it is, makes the LeBron decision to come back to Cleveland even more foolish.
I mean, LeBron went to 4 straight finals, and LeBron's been to 5 since he left Miami, and he has 2
But
championships.
do you think LeBron with Eric Spoelstra could have been what Michael Jordan was with Phil Jackson?
Maybe. But if he doesn't go back to Cleveland, he doesn't have 2016. And to me, LeBron getting the fairy tale championship to Cleveland is worth like 3 of Michael Jordan's championships from a legacy perspective. Like, getting that title for Cleveland, to me, matters so much more than if he had stayed and gotten like 3 or 4 with Miami. Because, like, who cares? I mean, it's like, think about Shaq and Kobe's 3 rings, right? Like, if Kobe had won one in Philadelphia, his hometown, I think that one ring would have mattered more than any one of those 3 rings.
I get, and I definitely feel like it's a really valid point because, of course, the connection LeBron had with the greater Cleveland, being from Akron, Ohio, which is really down the road from Cleveland. I went there. I know how close they are. But in terms of solely, because a lot of people like compare Michael Jordan to LeBron, and they don't. And in that comparison, you don't like in terms of emotion connection. Definitely, 2016 is worth 3 championships, but solely in like a cold analysis, I think Eric Spoelstra with LeBron could have been what Michael was with Phil Jackson.
Yeah, or what like Tim Duncan was with like Greg Popovich.
Yeah,
So.
I really feel that.
And also too, like, how long would they have kept Wade? How long would they have kept Bosh? How different would the roster would look like if they had kept all 4 of them? I think also is the question. So, I mean, it would have been interesting. I definitely think they would have ran the East the entire time he was there, and they still, I think, would be running the East now. Because if Eric Spoelstra can do this with Jimmy Butler, who, I mean, and I think this is the conversation too. Where is Jimmy Butler right now in terms of the NBA hierarchy?
But he still doesn't have a championship, so it's hard to judge.
Right. I think to me, he's like Kawhi Leonard without rings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. If he gets a ring, he's in the Kawhi Leonard territory, where you're not in the all-time GOATs range, but you're going to be a legend because you have those rings, because you played so brilliantly. And right now, Jimmy Butler is like at Allen Iverson level. Iverson never won a title, but he was a legend. And especially with the way he played in some of those playoff series, especially in the one where he took the Sixers to the finals. So I think he's kind of in that tier right now. But if he can win a championship, which I think the Heat, I've doubted them all postseason. I'm going to stop down them. I think they have a shot against the Nuggets. Now, I think the Nuggets are the better team. I would pick the Nuggets in 6 against the Heat right now. But I think, otherwise it'll
But
be a very interesting series.
but I definitely don't feel it's gonna be a mismatch like the Knicks and the Spurs were in the 1999-2000 NBA Finals, where I think that probably was the last time an 8 seed faced. I think the Spurs were a 1 seed.
Right,
I
right,
think.
right. And that was, I think, was a sweep, right? Or it might have been 5
Yeah,
games or something like
sweep
that.
for like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Knicks won an amazing run, but it just didn't. They
Oh
just
no,
didn't
it
have
was
anything for this
4-1.
win power.
4-1 wasn't a sweep.
Yeah, they did get a
Knicks
one.
saw one game.
I'll say this: the X factor in a Nuggets Heat final would be Bam Adebayo. How can he handle Nikola Jokic? That would be the X factor. Um, and obviously just the role players, because like Gabe Vincent and players like that, they've been incredible this entire postseason. And that's just something I wasn't expecting from Miami. But they have been that good. So I'm very interested in what we get in Heat Nuggets, and I am perplexed by Boston. I think we got to start talking about Boston the same way we start talking about Philadelphia, because you have all that talent, you've accumulated all these picks, and they haven't had anything to show for it. They have one Eastern Conference Final championship. They lost in 6 last year, and they're about to get swept by an 8 seed. It's bad. It's awful. Jason Tatum, is so inconsistent. He can't be considered a superstar, in my opinion. Yes, when he plays great, he's a superstar, but that's once in a blue moon. Jaylen Brown is obviously just wanting to get out of Boston, and
Do you think it just shows that Brad Stevens run with the Celtics? He was the head coach, and then he went to the front office. Do you think it just didn't work?
yeah, it just didn't work. I mean, Brad Stevens was a way better college coach. I thought we were talented he was in the NBA. It's a way different league. It's like Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan was great in college, great at Florida, and he just wasn't great in the NBA.
Rick Pitino.
Correct. Rick Pitino is another one. I mean, how do you think Rick Barnes would do if he went to the NBA?
Calipari also went to the NBA and failed.
Yep. I mean, it's like college football. Like Nick Saban is the greatest quarterback coach of all time at Alabama. Couldn't do anything in Miami. The only coach, really, if you think about it, I mean, you have Larry Brown, who won both at Kansas and college. He also won with the Pistons, I believe. He won a title with the Pistons. So he's won titles in both NBA and college, kind of like how Pete Carroll won titles with USC, although I know they got stripped, but I don't care. They won those titles, or won that title. Excuse me, they had one national title. And then he won a Super Bowl with Seattle. So like Larry Brown, Pete Carroll, you got Barry Switzer, who won with both Miami and Oklahoma, Dallas and Oklahoma. You have Jimmy Johnson, who won titles with both Miami Hurricanes and the Dallas Cowboys. But that list isn't very long to be able to adjust between both a professional and college variant of the game.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why the reason I brought Brad Stevens to the debate is that when he arrived to Boston, he made all sorts of moves as a head coach. Like there was the Kyrie move, and then Jason Tatum, and then when he went from the head coaching to the front office, we were like, oh well, he didn't work as a coach, but he can be good in. And then probably he helped to hire a coach that was frankly a disaster. Like I don't know how much the Celtics have to rebuild, but I think the rebuild should not start on the floor. It should start on the front office.
I agree. I mean, they had all of this draft capital, and you're right, they've wasted it. And I don't know what you do here, because you still have a very good roster. You're still going to be a top 4 seed next year in the East, but you have to really sit back and think: can you really win a title with this roster right now? And no, I don't think you can. You don't have a superstar you can trust. So I don't know where they go from here. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. But think about Boston. Think about the city of Boston this postseason. the Bruins first get knocked out by the Florida Panthers, and which, by the way, Florida just went up 3-0 on Carolina. So the Panthers and Heat are both a game away from their respective league championships, which means South Florida is going to be absolutely rocking.
And how about the state of Florida dominating the state of Boston in sports?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the state of Massachusetts just can't catch a
Oh,
break.
yeah, that's what I meant. Like the Boston being dominated by South Florida.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Well, hey, a lot of
But
people from
and
Boston
also
moved to South Florida anyway, so.
and they both practically the same scenario. Like the Celtics were the top favorite, the Bruins were the top favorite, and the underdog Panthers and Heat, and they came there and just destroy it. And yeah, I am just saying that I feel like the Nuggets and the Heat. There's not going to be much ratings final, but I think it's going to be a really battle, a big battle.
I think that from a ratings perspective, I get it. It isn't the Lakers, it isn't the Celtics, but I mean, Miami is a really big market, and Denver. You have to remember, like the state of Colorado it's a very big state, and really like you'll have the entire interior Mountain West there. I mean, Denver's a huge market, so um, I mean, I'm excited to see Denver in the championship. The Nuggets have a huge fan base. The Nuggets have a lot of history, and they just haven't been able to get over the hump. Because I believe this would be their first NBA Finals, if I'm not mistaken, as a franchise. And of course, one of their most famous players of all time, retired today in Carmelo Anthony. And Carmelo, he was drafted in the same draft class as LeBron. He was the third pick. Of course, obviously Denver would not have had a chance with LeBron, so Carmelo was really the best pick at that spot, and that worked out for him. They won a lot of games. He put up a lot of scoring in his time. They made a Western Conference Finals. Of course, Carmelo from then left Denver, got traded to New York, was the best player in the Knicks for several years. The best they could do there was the Eastern Conference semis. And then Carmelo started bouncing from team to team at the end of his career. Of course, infamously was supposed to be part of a big three in Oklahoma City, which failed in the first round to Portland. And from there, he just never really was a big piece of a team again.
Carmelo Anthony, I will always remember him. First of all, because he was my first big idol in the NBA. I still have his jersey. As a Knicks fan, I started to root for the Knicks the same time as Carmelo got to the Knicks. I remember when he was traded to New York, I was so ecstatic. I was like, finally, I still remember watching his first game as a Knick, and the opening was chill, like the I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Like it felt so right for Carmelo Anthony to come to the Knicks. Like, the protege of New York basketball coming home to bring the Knicks a title. And of course, the 2013 season was the closest he got. He was eliminated, I believe, by the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and of course, then Indiana would be eliminated by the Heat. But and my personal connection to him, I'll never forget the game that he dominated against the Hawks that went to 4 overtimes. That he was so incredible on the floor. Like I was so impressed by him. Like even though the Knicks lost that game, I was astounded by how talented he was. Like
It's pretty interesting. Like he's probably the most important New York basketball player of this millennium, of this century. Being from New York, taking the Syracuse Orange to their only national title, only under Jim Boeheim, and as you said, being the most visible star of the New York Knicks.
like he was such a legend in New York. Like as you say, like he won in college for New York, so he was so pressured to And of course, the way he handled the Germline fever, that of course was the biggest thing in his career. I think if he played out right, he would have embraced Lynn and make it a duo. Probably New York would even have a higher chance, but his ego was so high that it kind of made the team derail. And it's so crazy to think that also Phil Jackson was an ex-president when Carmelo was still there. But as I was talking to you before we start on the air, like if any athlete would retire a three-time gold medalist and with such an accomplishment he had, he would have been like revered. But since he didn't deliver what people thought he would, he'll still feel like a player that kind of didn't make like that couldn't hit his ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think in a way he hit a ceiling. Like, I mean, he wasn't LeBron, and he literally was in that same class as LeBron, and that just shows the difference between a LeBron and a Carmelo. Like Carmelo will be remembered as an exciting player to watch, a high scoring player, but he isn't going to be an all time great. I mean, I think I know he's in the NBA 75. He's probably somewhere in that top 50 range all time, but he isn't obviously anywhere close to that top. And that's like when you look at LeBron, his most famous play ever is a block. Like it's a defensive play just by him being the highest scoring player of all time. Carmelo never really was a great defender. And that's the difference between really good players and great players. That's nothing against Carmelo, just not everyone can be the GOAT. Not everyone can be the best. And
And
Carmelo, I think, was as good as he could have been.
he just said that if he had succeeded in New York, he would have been one of the most revered athletes in the U.S. Because if an athlete is big in New York, is big in the rest of the country. Like talk about Derek Jeter, Eli Manning. He could have been on that,
Right.
like on them, like on that group, but he didn't make it. But kudos to him. Great career, still great athlete. As I said, three-time a gold medalist. I think he probably was the NBA player that embraced playing for the U.S. national team in the Olympics. I think.
Yeah, because I mean, I could make a joke saying, that's where he knew he could win, but hey, he, you have to respect him for winning those titles and going out there and playing hard, especially on that redeem team and all that. So very, very good career, as you said. Just a little bit of a score up there. Now we're about 2 minutes left in this game. The Nuggets lead 110-107 in Los Angeles. The Nuggets 2 minutes away if they can hold on to winning their first ever Western Conference Finals and advance into their first ever NBA championship. Aaron Gordon at the line with 2 minutes left. LeBron and the Lakers are going to have to dig deep to find a way to extend their season. But going to be a fascinating finish there in Los Angeles. But real quickly, over to Stanley Cup. Of course, we mentioned the Panthers. 3-0 on Carolina. I mean, I think this is very supportive for Carolina. I mean, they literally have lost all 3 games by a goal. They lost the first 2 at home in Raleigh in overtime. Lost tonight 1-0. Just the Panthers have just been lights out, especially on defense in this playoffs. I mean, it's just been very incredible to see. And if they play defense like that in the Stanley Cup Finals, they can beat Vegas or Dallas.
I think it's gonna be Dallas, Florida.
Yeah, well, the Vegas is up 2-0 on Dallas. So they do have to go back to Dallas for Game 3 tomorrow. But if Vegas can win 1 of 2 in Dallas, I think Vegas is going to win the Western Conference Finals. Right now, we're looking at Las Vegas versus Florida for the hockey championship. I don't think it could get further away from
like
hockey.
Beach versus desert for a sport that is all about ice.
I mean, okay, I saw this on Twitter the other day. Imagine being a Canadian TV executive and having to convince the people in Canada to get excited for a Stanley Cup final between Las Vegas and Florida.
Gosh, like there's got to be some sort of a reevaluation for the Canada as a whole, not only for one franchise but all of them. How can they cannot even make it to the Stanley Cup final for almost 3 decades? How?
Right. I mean, you had like Montreal a couple years ago. You had Vancouver back in 2011, but they couldn't win it. I don't know. It's just, and I get it. Most of the players on Florida and Vegas are Canadian anyway. I get that, but still, it just doesn't feel right. Neither one of those fan bases appreciate hockey the way that those Canadian fan bases do, and it just doesn't feel right. But alas, that's the Stanley Cup looks like we're gonna get unless Dallas comes back and beats. But even then, Dallas, Florida doesn't really sound any better in terms of what sounds traditionally hockey. So.
But I guess in this new world of sports, a team in the desert and a team in the beach can, be really dominating forces in, ice hockey.
Yeah, I mean it's like the idea of USC going to Wisconsin in November, and that being a conference game. It's the same deal. Like that doesn't sound right, but it's going to be the reality. So, what we think of normal sports always tends to change. But yeah. But anyways, quick MLB. The Braves have been on an interesting roller coaster recently. They kind of struggled this weekend against Seattle. They did win the series, but they had to come back yesterday. Today, they had a really nice lead on LA, but they blew it. AJ Minter blew the lead today. So they lost game 1 to the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman had a great day for LA. It's been tough. I mean, last week they did not play well at all against Toronto, but they did win the series against Texas, win the series against Seattle, but lost tonight against LA. They're still in the lead by like 5 games. So they're in a good spot.
Yeah, definitely. And, as you said, of course, Memorial Day is the first moment that people kind of paying attention to baseball because it's the first big holiday in America where you have baseball. But I feel like by after the All-Star game, then really you see the contenders and the pretenders.
Absolutely. So there's still time for things to get sorted out for sure. But we're about to get into those dog days of summer, and that's when you really just get into the grind of the season. Anthony Davis, just as a heads up here, 1:13 left in the fourth. It's a 1-point game now, 111, 110. Anthony Davis about to tie a free throw here to tie the game. He's up to 20. So he's been able to get going here a little bit in the fourth quarter. He shoots. He scores. So it's 111 all, 113 left in the fourth quarter. Denver now bringing up the ball. Davis has 10 in the fourth quarter. So let's see what they do here. Denver has the ball. Jamal Murray in the top of the key. Going over to the right. 101 with Anthony Davis. And he trips. I thought that was a foul at first. They didn't call a foul, but they're going to call it a tie-up. 56.8 seconds left. I think they might give Denver the ball here. Yep, Denver has the ball, I think. Yeah, so 111 all. So it is coming down to the wire here in Los Angeles. Denver trying to find a way to win the series. Nikola Jokic has the ball. He goes in and he scores in the paint. 51.7 seconds left. The Nuggets lead by 2. LeBron has the ball. 45 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Jokic now has 30, 14, and 13. LeBron, he thought about shooting, but he still has the ball. 7 seconds left in the shot clock. LeBron, he passes it over, and they pass it out of bounds. But I think that was actually deflected.
Wow.
By the
Nick's keep
Nuggets.
on updating. Nick is always Nick's always saves me on broadcast. The World Cup, NBA.
Yeah. At this point, might as well just call this one out because there's 31.3 seconds. Dennis Schroeder is passing in the ball here. And timeout. LA. So 31 seconds left. We have a timeout. LA down 2. Their whole season on the line.
Yeah, we'll see about that. And you keep us updating. But I and both we can talk about next week. Let me just go straight to the Brazilian topics before I think the game resumes. Brazilian Championship week 7. Corinthians another loss. But they play better. They play better. They improved, but they went to they play Flamengo in Flamengo Stadium. They have more shots, they have same shots on target, less possession, but they have more opportunities. But they couldn't, put on the net. And then at the end of the game, already on the extra time, Léo Pereira scores 1-0. You can say it was an unfair loss, but it's a loss. The last time, last time Corinthians won a soccer match was in April. It's going to be almost a month, Nick. So it's 1,
God,
2,
just so
3,
bad.
4, 5, 6, 7 games, and
Yeah.
it's like 5 losses and 2 ties. Jeez,
All right.
gee. And
All
they're
right,
gonna go to Argentina to play Argentino Juniors, and they're gonna have to win. They're gonna have to win because if they lose, they're practically out. Because like Corinthians has 3 points, Argentino Junior 7, Independiente del Valle 6. If they lose, they're gonna be Argentino Juniors 10, Independiente del Valle 9, Corinthians 3. So they'll practically be out. So Wednesday is a do or die game for Corinthians.
Yeah, LeBron just missed a game tying shot. Why are they not fouling? What in the world? Okay, so the LA has like 5 seconds now. They're going to call a timeout. Okay, so basically what happened there. So LA had 3 seconds to inbound. LeBron tried a really contested shot. They missed. Denver brings the ball back down. LA chooses not to foul, and it ended up working for Los Angeles. So LA got the rebound. So they just called timeout. They're down by 2, 4 seconds. 2 to send it to OT, 3 to win and extend their season. The last shot for the Los Angeles Lakers here as they go back to timeout. I'll certainly have to reinterrupt when they come back.
Please let me know. I'll be even more brief. So Santos and Palmeiras tie 0-0. And São Paulo had a really good game win 4-2. Botafogo is still on the lead, 18 points. Palmeiras second, Fluminense third, Atlético Mineiro fourth. In Libertadores, Corinthians play, I said, against Argentino Juniors, Palmeiras and Cerro Porteño. Fluminense also play Libertadores, Flamengo, São Paulo in Sudamericana, also right. Bragantino. Go ahead.
Right, we are about ready here to go. So 4 seconds left. 2 to OT. Austin Reeves is going to pass it in. Can Denver survive this last possession and win the Western Conference Finals? LeBron gets the ball. He's going to drive, and he gets stopped. He gets blocked, and Denver is the Western Conference champions. Nikola Jokic blocked LeBron James at the rim. What a defensive play. And Denver is going to the NBA Finals.
Stunning in the Crypto.com arena. Wow.
And a sweep. Get the brooms. And LeBron gave Nikola Jokic a quick hug, and he is walking off the court.
So I guess
Unbelievable.
at least Denver knows they're gonna have 10 days to rest. So Denver Nuggets will be rested.
Oh yeah, they will. Getting swept. I mean, as I said, Denver was the better team here, obviously, but like it wasn't like they got blown out any of the 4 times. It was all 4 close losses, but it's just crazy how Los Angeles could never find a way to win one of these games against Denver.
They just couldn't.
I don't know how much this really means in the grand scheme of LeBron's legacy, but you got to feel like it matters at least somewhat. This is not the first time he's been swept. It got swept back in 2007. Got swept again one of the years against the Warriors, and got swept here. So yeah, but obviously a momentous changing series for Denver. And now for the Nuggets. The time is nigh. Denver, you got to get it done in the NBA Finals. You got to get it done. You've got the team. I think they can win this entire thing.
Now they're going to have to wait if they face Miami or Boston.
Oh, absolutely. So, congratulations to Denver. I know they've been waiting a long time up there in the Mile High City for their basketball team to make it. Although I know they just had the Broncos a couple of years ago. They just had the Avalanche last year. Hey, is Denver the new city of champions? If the Nuggets win, the Broncos have had Super Bowl in the last 10 years. The Avalanche have a Stanley Cup. And could the Nuggets jump on board with an NBA championship?
And also don't forget the Colorado Buffaloes football team with Deion Sanders.
Would be lucky to win 5 games this year.
I'm just saying, just saying.
Yeah. Well, the Rockies still have a long way to go. So, but clearly Denver is on a roll. But anyway, let's get back to some Brazilian talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish in the topic. So, I in terms of let's wrap up like Brazilian Championship Week 7. I still think that Botafogo's gonna be in first place for long. I don't know where their ceiling is, but I don't think they're gonna remain there for as much. They don't have the roster depth. I think Palmeiras definitely is gonna be up there. Fluminense. The only question is they have a lot of veteran players, so I don't know if they're gonna keep up there. Flamengo is stagnated. They won their last 3 games, but they haven't performed like people expected to. And of course, Corinthians and Vasco, both big brands, both teams with huge expectations this year, especially Vasco recently being bought by an American investment company, 777 Partners, and expecting a lot of investment. And now they're delaying they're delaying payments, and the coach has been a disaster. And Corinthians, like I talked a lot about how they mismanage the coaching hires in the recent times, and with all the craziness with Kuka, and now bring back a coach that has not been a soccer coach in 2 years. He tried to run for the Senate and couldn't, and he has not won a single game. And he lost 5 games and tied 2. So Corinthians and Vasco right now, big brands with the mess, and Vasco has a bye week, and Corinthians plays in Libertadores. But the biggest news for me this weekend, Rio Branco finally won a soccer game. Finally, after the disappointment tied last Saturday with all the mess on and off the field, they got a win 1-0 over Amparo, and they are in third place in Group 4. They're not in relegation zone. They're in the qualifying zone for the second round. Hopefully, they can get the momentum to at least keep in the top four in the group and be qualified. That's what I hope for. And just close up the Brazilian topics. Sad situation in Madrid for my man Vini Jr., one of the best Brazilian prospects, a true talent. I think he's going to replace Neymar as the biggest Brazilian star in Brazilian soccer. Another episode of racism with Valencia fans calling mono, mono. I think you guys know what that means. And it's just a sad situation. I don't know how much Vinny is gonna put up with that, or Real Madrid definitely doesn't want to lose him because, like, like he is the biggest. Like last year, he scored the winning goal in the Champions League title.
Yeah, and there's actually no place for that. And it just goes to show that that we unfortunately have this issue of racism all over the world, and in many ways, it's worse in other countries than it is in the United States. And it just goes to show, like as we saw in that, as you have described in Madrid, that's a real shame that he's facing that, and you know, it
And it's
just
not in
sucks.
Madrid; is where Madrid plays. Valencia, but it happened in Valladolid and other cities where Madrid goes to play. It's just I don't know what the Spanish society deals with that and how much they address it, but
Mhm.
definitely I think about now as can Vinny Jr. put up with that to keep in the biggest brand in soccer at Real Madrid, or he'll be done with it and maybe will go to, let's say, Premier League.
I mean, England has their own racism issues. Like you're not escaping racism in Europe, especially. Um,
But I don't think
yeah,
he's gonna get racism chance in England like he gets in Spain.
I mean, if he goes to Millwall, he might. Hey,
But
everyone play.
Millwall is one case. Like in
Yeah,
Spain has been 11.
I guess it's fair. I can't really think of any other club in England that quite is like Millwall
Yeah,
versus what you have
Millwall
in
is
England,
it's Millwall is such a unique team that they people know Millwall more for the movies than for the accomplishments on the field.
which I feel like they'd have like none in terms of accomplishments in the
No,
field.
no, Millwall. They like I don't know if you know, they butchered one of the biggest opportunities to go to the Premier League.
Oh
Like
yeah, I remember you told me about this a few weeks ago, about
yeah,
how they had a chance, and it's so sucked because like I totally would have watched Millwall in the Premier League just to see their fans go to like Old Trafford and Etihad Stadium, and just to see how that would have gone, because
yeah.
I feel like that would have been super entertaining for all the shenanigans that would have happened in the Premier League.
Yeah, like of course I wanted to go and Millwall and West Ham is one of the biggest derbies in one of the biggest derbies in England. Like, it's so famous around the world. But unfortunately they just couldn't. They just couldn't like I wanted to remember like Millwall was winning, I think it was like 3-0, and they were getting in the stands and then they lost 4-3 and they were eliminated. I
Yeah,
believe
I bet that started a riot like it always does with Millwall.
for Blackburn. They were 3-0 against Blackburn Rovers, and the Blackburn won 4-3, but Blackburn also did not make it. So both were eliminated. Both were fighting for the playoff spot, but both did not make it. And it was,
Yeah,
but just to wrap up, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
just wanted one. I wanted to one day see like a Champions League like semifinal in the Den. I just want to see what that looks like,
But
like that
but
crowd.
but one of the teams that is fighting for promotion is Luton Town, and you just Google Luton Town Stadium, and look at like what Kenilworth Road neighborhood looks like, and you see how that's gonna be in the Premier League.
I mean, it's just incredible to really think about. It's like if Finley Stadium in Chattanooga was in the SEC.
Yeah, like
Um,
it's such a unique, small atmosphere, Luton Town, and they're gonna face Coventry on Thursday, I believe, Saturday in Wembley Stadium for the championship playoff final. But in terms of Vinny Jr., and I hope he doesn't get affected. I hope he's stronger than this racism issues and keep being a greatest player in Spanish league that he is. And he's just sad.
yeah.
And
It's just too. And it also sucks that his team got blown out as well last
yeah,
week
Real
by Man
Madrid.
City.
Yeah, like Real Madrid definitely it's not say terrible season, but when Real Madrid doesn't win titles, definitely is not a great season. Like they lost in La Liga, they lost Champions League, they lost the Copa del Rey. They, it's a it when you don't win titles, it is a mediocre season to say to be like to be the at least gentle. Like
Yeah, and just quickly, just to kind of wrap things up, who do you have on June 10th in that Man City Inter Milan game? Because I mean, I'm thinking Man City.
I'm thinking Man City too. Even though I think Inter Milan has most tradition, I think Man City they finally got the time. Like when your best player Haaland don't have to play his best in the Premier League semifinals and you still destroy Real Madrid, it just show that you this you're and also Man City is so lucky they won their Premier League title at home. They didn't even have to play because Arsenal butchered. Arsenal was they had the longest streak in terms of days in the top of the Premier League and they lost it. And
I mean,
it's so
freaking
funny
Arsenal,
that
like what a choke! What a choke the last couple of weeks, losing to
what a
Brighton
choke!
three
What a
0
choke!
Yeah, I mean, come on, the Gunners. But that's what they do
Yeah,
every year.
yeah.
I mean,
That's what they do. I
yeah,
mean, since they move out from Highbury Stadium to Emirates Stadium, has been a curse. They have not won like a major title. They only won, I
yeah.
think, the FA Cup. But Highbury, I think they made a mistake by moving out from Highbury. Of course, Emirates Stadium was a better, more modern stadium, yeah. But I think Highbury was their true home venue.
It's like Tottenham. Like I think they were better when they were in White Hart Lane
Yeah,
versus in Hotspur Stadium. Like those old stadiums had character, and the modern stadiums don't. That's why I'm glad you still have Old Trafford. You're glad you still have Anfield. Um,
yeah,
I hope those teams stick with those stadiums.
definitely. That's all the time we have left for Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. I'm so proud to say the only podcast in the world that talks about United States of America and Brazilian topic, Brazilian sports, and
On
that's
occasion, everything else too.
yeah,
We actually
yeah,
talked a lot of European too today. So
yeah. We have since soccer is uh, such a global topic, like we have to embrace European soccer as well.
yeah, absolutely. But hey, it's great. With Memorial Day weekend coming up, a lot of people are going to be outside, barbecuing. I'm going to be watching a lot of racing and baseball,
No.
and it's going to be a good time. So,
Yeah. I will be this weekend. Actually, there's gonna be something called Ahaya, which is kind of like a I don't know how to describe June parties here. Like basically, is a tradition where you have a lot of food and a lot of traditional food, like country food. It's like hot wine, sweets with sweet corn and hot dogs and pastel and a lot of food and it's that time of the year. I love that time of the year.
absolutely. Because, man, it's entering into winter for
Yeah,
y'all.
so
So,
yeah, the my radio station, not my radio station per se, but the media group that owns my radio station is gonna do one of those parties right outside the station. So on Friday, I'll be broadcasting right outside the party. So it'll be kind
oh,
of
that's cool.
yeah. So my radio show is gonna be the kickoff for the party.
Yeah, it's fun. Like I know, like England, like when I was there this time of year, they had a bank holiday the last weekend of May. So I feel like everyone has a holiday for the end of May. Just everyone calls it different.
Yeah, I'm trying to find Stingray. Is that correct? Stingray?
Stingray,
No, no,
like the food
no.
or the fish.
I'm trying to say the June party. Like I'm trying to say the way translate Festa Junina, or it's so hard to translate Festa Junina.
I'll
But
have to look it up.
yeah, but for Gus Tomazeli down here in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil.
I'm Nicholas Hill from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, and you've been watching Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, episode 78, recorded on May 22nd, 2023. You'll have a phenomenal day.